Well, welcome everybody. This is Dr. Hank, and you know why we're here. This is Agent Wealth Network, and this is the podcast that has been growing, one of America's fastest podcasts, growing by about 1,000 agents every week. It has just been incredible on how people have enjoyed the knowledge and the information. And what we do is we help agents, real estate agents, and brokers to increase their business, to increase their wealth, and really to have a better life. And, every week we have one of the top people in the industry, in the real estate industry with us, and that they've been kind enough to join us and share their knowledge with us. This week is probably the most special week that I've ever had on the podcast. And that's because we have Pat Hiban. And Pat Hiban is just an amazing a real estate agent and man, an entrepreneur that, just to give you an idea, he sold over $1 billion worth of real estate. And so I don't think I have anybody on the show that has topped that. He was with Remax and was number one at Remax, number one agent at Remax. Then he goes over to Keller Williams, becomes number one at Keller Williams. And then he said, you know what, I have some really special things. And so I want to do some things, like he wrote a book, Six Steps to a Seven-Figure Income. And he has the Rebus University that you can see there. And I was privileged enough to be on his show, in which is talk about a large podcast. This is in 90 plus countries around the world, called Real Estate Rock Stars. And so please welcome my very special guest and great friend already after the last couple of weeks, Pat Hiban. Hello, Pat.
Hey, Dr. Hank, great to be here today.
Well, thanks so much for having being on our show and sharing the wealth of knowledge and information that you have. Can you just help us a little because you're just so out there on, $1 billion of sales and number one in these, mega brokers, that can you maybe just share a little about, start out on kind of where you started from and how you were able to build the real estate empire that you did?
Absolutely. I started out fresh out of college, actually. I couldn't really get a decent job doing anything else, so I got into real estate sales because it was the lowest barrier to entry, as you know. And so I was 21 years old and started out, and that was 1988 was my first full year in the business. And,
Wow.
I was a full-time realtor all the way up until about, 2011, 12. In 2010, I sold my business to my top agent, Mike Sloan, my team business. And, I wrote my book, Six Steps to Seven Figures, in 2011. And that's essentially where I went on book tour and stopped working in the real estate game, and then I became an investor. And then about 3 years ago, I started Rebus University and Real Estate Rockstars, and that's where I am today.
That's great. I love that, Real Estate Rock Stars. It just has a good tone to it, a good touch. And indeed, you have rock stars. You've had all kinds of people from who's some of the famous people you had on your rock star show?
Yeah, well, we've had Robert Kiyosaki from Rich Dad Poor Dad, Barbara Corcoran, of course, from Shark Tank has been on. All the best trainers and all the top real estate agents and brokers from around the world, really.
Wow, that's fantastic. Can I ask, under the six steps to a seven-figure income, could you share with us maybe a couple of key points from that book that you think would be helpful for us to grow our business?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think the two most popular chapters are really the last two. Let me just tell you the six steps real fast. The first step is affirmations, goal setting, and affirmations. Figuring out what it is that you want, and then convincing your mind that you're worthy of it. The second step is tracking, right? Tracking your goals. tracking everything in real estate. So many agents lose track of stuff, and it's the death of us.
Yeah.
The third step is mentors and masterminds, finding people to surround yourself with that can uplift you and help you reach your goals. The fourth step is act. All right, you reap what you sow 100% of the time. And then the fifth step is build, right, which is build on a success up, not from the ground up. And by that I mean, most people just try to build from the ground up. And as real estate agents, we're so much smarter in finding a success, no matter how big, in building on that, i.e., if you sell a house in a certain neighborhood, don't go to the next neighborhood or a different neighborhood or different zip code to try to, get your next listing. Go to that exact same neighborhood, right? Because your success is going to be so much easier if you stay right there because you're already a neighborhood expert. And that's the fifth step, which is a very popular one. And then invest is the sixth step, which is, basically save your money and invest it wisely.
Wow, that's a great one. On that last one of the reasons why I really got out of being just a broker in a regular brokerage and with my 420 agents is I just was at such a despair with my agents that I'd ask them, first of all, what's your 5-year business plan? And so that kind of goes to like your step number one on the goal setting, on it. And then those that did have a goal, they'd say, well, help me increase my commissions, and I'd help them increase their commissions. And then they'd increase their commissions. I talked to them a year or two later, and I said, hey, how's that goal going? And they said, well, I got a bigger house, or I have a bigger car, and they didn't do it. So is there how can we prevent ourselves from spending all the money that we make? Because, we're like NFL players. We can make salaries like that, like NFL players. So how do you save on that wealth? Do you have some ways, strategies that could help us to save money and then to invest it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so, most real estate agents are what I call fillionaires. And what a fillionaire is a fake millionaire. And it starts out early. Unfortunately, we're trained by our broker that, when you show up at a listing appointment, you can't show up in a hoopty, right? You can't show up in the car you drove in high school, because people are going to judge you based on what you park out front. And so it starts with the nice car. Having a nice car deems you as successful, but then it unfortunately gets bigger and bigger. Just doesn't stop there. I wish agents would just stop there with the car, and that's the only thing they buy that's nice, but they don't. And the reason is because the checks are so fat. So they get these fat checks, and they're like, oh, okay, well, here's a $10,000 check or a $7,000 check. Let me go, and get this cool watch or 3 watches, or what else can I get clothes wise, or what else can I get for my backyard? First it's a deck, then it's a patio, and then it's a fire pit, then it's a pool, then it's a all kinds of stuff. So and so what happens is the more money you make, the more you spend, and it's a vicious cycle. And then all of a sudden the market changes, which it did, and we saw it did. And I can tell you, I probably had 100 friends that were, crushing it and appeared to be extremely rich in 2007. And, come along 2011, and I don't see them anymore, right? And they're working at Nordstrom. So, I think as real estate agents, we need to learn to quit. We need to learn to, save. Typical advice you get from a financial planner is save 10% of everything you make, which I think is ridiculous. I think the way it should be, quite frankly, Hank, is you save. You basically set up your monthly income. I mean, your monthly needs. So, for instance, let's say your utility bills, your food, family needs, all that stuff runs $10,000. Let's just use a flat number, $10,000 a month. If you make $20,000 one month, you should save 10, right? You should save everything over your monthly nut, right, should be saved. And then that savings should be put in investments, i.e., real estates are my favorite. Real estate
Yeah.
investments, of course, are my favorite.
Yes, yes. I just read an article that came up by the Wall Street Journal yesterday, and it said it is still a good time for real estate and investing. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, it's at the homes are all time high, and it's not a good time." But the deals are out there, and so you can't listen to that media. That you're right. Real estate is certainly a way of doing that. Now, you mentioned steps 5 and 6 are the most important. Did you say on that,
Well,
or
those are the ones that people comment on, and we have
yeah?
300 some comments on Amazon and that sort of thing, and I think that those
Wow,
are those are the ones that get commented on a lot.
I see. Got it. And so let's, if we can, do you want to go through those steps? Because like I'll tell you, I just love them. That step one on this affirmations, and maybe if you wouldn't mind to just
No,
we
absolutely,
can
sure.
walk through each one of those. But let's start with affirmations, and that um, you know. So I'm a mental scientist, and so it all goes back to what we're thinking, and our prayer is really our thought. And one of the ways to direct our thinking is with affirmations, and I think most of us know, like, I am is a very powerful affirmation, that I am successful, and I'm a great real estate agent, and I'm a good listener, and whatever. And what are some of the key affirmations that you have found to really be successful for you, as well as all of the thousands of agents that you have trained and helped?
Well, that's a great question. Well, of course, what I did in the book is I actually listed. I got out my journals, and so I started out my affirmations, on a cassette tape, and I
Uh-huh.
read them in a cassette tape. And then the easiest thing for me, rather than reading them or out loud or repeating them, was just to put them on a cassette and just listen to them in the car, right?
Yeah.
Because it takes 5 minutes and you're driving anyway. So I started out with those, and then I went to CDs, and then from CDs, of course, I went to cell phones and recorded them on cell phones, and now I have them recorded on my cell phone. So, I've
Right.
been doing this for a long time, 3 decades, and
Mm.
basically, um, you start out there's two types of goals that you need to have, right? You need to have a big goal, right? Like they say in Good to Great, the book Good to Great, you need a BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal, right? So if your BHAG is, let's say, number of listings, right?
Yeah.
So if your BHAG is, you know, 5 listings a month or 10 listings a month, you first need to write that down and then create an affirmation around it, like I list 10 houses a month.
Yes.
But then
Right.
the next goal, right, is your daily goal that is actually an action item, because
Yeah.
you know um, there's a saying by Jim Rohn, and he says affirmation without discipline is the beginning of delusion.
For sure.
So what he's saying there is you can't just sit in your living room and say, I am a millionaire, I am a millionaire, I am a millionaire, expect it to rain $1 million on there, right? You need to get off your butt and you need to do something.
Yeah.
You need to create the money first, and then you need to save the money second, and then you need to count it, right? So
That's
so,
good.
so you have to have a daily goal, and let's go back to the listing. So, if your goal is 10 listings a month, then it needs to be, I call um,
Mhm.
40 people a day and speak to them,
Mhm.
um, uh, that could potentially be listing their house, or every day, or I knock on X amount of doors a day, or whatever it is. You got to figure out what action it's going to take to get those listings, right? And if you
Yeah.
don't do that action, then you're not going to get the listings. So
Yeah.
whatever it is, and there's a million ways to get listings, million
Mhm.
ways to get buyers, you decide what it is, and then
Yeah.
you set that goals, and then your affirmation becomes, like I said, And if you're a social business getter, which means you just get business socially, whether
Hmm.
it's listings or buyers, it could be I hand out 20 business cards a day, right? Or I add 20 people to Facebook and private message them every day, whatever it is, right? That you have to have both goals and both sets of affirmations. And then you just do that throughout many different categories. You do it throughout health, right? You do it throughout relationships. You do it throughout business, everything.
Sure, sure. That's great. And so, a couple of things on that. That with that, step one is affirmations, which we talked about, and then your goals. And you said something magical about you have to figure out what you want. And so, for people to really be clear, and everybody thinks they know what they want, but they really haven't set it down. And I always teach to write that down and to really write down, what is it that you want. The other point is on this action. And so I would encourage all of us, it isn't just to be doing something. So if I keep on doing stuff, I end up getting do. And so a lot of people, and a lot of people say that, right? That, my life is kind of right? Shitty. And so in this, that you want to be inspired. And so if it is, hey, I want to get out there and pass out those business cards, or I want to get out there and make 40 calls a day, or I want to get out there to the social media or connect with people, or however you're going to do it. But it needs to be inspired. So don't just drag yourself into something, oh, I got to go do this, because if you just go do that without that inspiration, that your action won't pay off like you want it to pay off. And do you think that's good counsel to
No,
everybody?
absolutely right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I
Okay.
said, you reap what you sow 100% of the time, right?
You bet, you bet. And so let's go into tracking a little. And I like what you just said about the money, that you got to create the money, that you save the money, and then you count the money. And I love that. And you just as tracking, and it's the second point to success. And so how can what are some techniques that you use that have been successful for tracking whatever it is, those actions or your money or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, that's a great question. Most real estate agents are visual people, so they track visually, which I think is smart, because then other agents will see it, hopefully, and
Yeah.
then when other agents see it, it's a form of accountability, right? And what I mean by that is, let's say you want to, go back to list 5 houses or whatever a month. Whether I've seen agents that do thermometers, where you draw a thermometer on a whiteboard, and then every house you list, you do it up, but you fill up the thermometer with a red line.
Yeah.
If you're going to do that, you want to do another thermometer, though, and that one is going to be the amount of people that you call, or the amount of people the small action goal, right? And you want to
Mm-hmm.
track that too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of like losing weight, right? The reason here's a question for you, Dr. Hank. Why
Sure.
why does Weight Watchers work so well?
Well, I think it's the accountability. I've never been on Weight Watchers, but I think they have some accountability in there, and you have to go to like a class, and I think you weigh yourself, right? And so you
Right,
actually count it, and then you count calories. So they do a lot of calculations, as I'm
right.
kind of
So
thinking out loud.
so they're
Yeah.
tracking all of that stuff, right? But
Yeah.
then they have you track everything you eat. So if you literally eat 2 peanut M&Ms, you have to write it down. So, I mean, that's extreme tracking. So here's
Yeah.
the question. What happens to somebody who goes to Weight Watchers? They lose 20 pounds over 6 months. And then on month 7, they stop going and they stop tracking. What
Usually
happens?
what, yeah, usually what happens is you not only gain that weight back, but a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The yo-yo effect. So it's clear that, like, tracking equals success and
Yeah.
not tracking equals failure. And so if you can realize that, then you could start tracking everything. I track the number of times I go to yoga. I track the number of times I text certain loved ones. I track the number of times, what number of dates I go on with my wife. Any sort of thing that you want to improve, you want to track so that it becomes a habit.
Yeah, and it's that, as you were talking about that, like with your wife, and just it's those soft and kind and loving things that it's meaningful. It'll attract those meaningful actions then, and it's just so meaningful on whether it's dates or number of times you do the yoga, and that's great that you're into yoga. I do yoga also, so we're finding more and more things that we have in common together,
There we
Pat.
go.
And
We're yogis.
and yogis, baby. and then the third step is this mentors and
Mentors and masterminds. So
yeah.
yeah, so you know, I've always had mentors, and I think a lot of people get this concept wrong. They think that a mentor should be like this old guy with long hair and a long beard sitting at the top of a hill under an apple tree, right?
With a big G on his
Yeah.
t-shirt.
And like this guy has the answer to everything. He's good at relationships, he's good at money, he's good at business, health, right? And that's just not how it is. The fact of the matter is most people have genius zones that are very, very, very narrow, right? Like the best business people in the world are shitty fathers and shitty husbands, and generally, I'm generalizing, right? So everybody's has great genius zones, and you have to realize that. And what that means for mentors is you should actually have 20, right? You should have a health mentor, who's massively healthy. And then you have a relationship mentor who has incredible relations. Then you have a business mentor. Then you have an investing mentor, maybe someone who doesn't even have a business, but is that old Italian guy that owns, 700 rental properties in Philadelphia or something. You know what I mean? Like a investor mentor. And then so you get mentors in all these different categories. Then that's how you learn to have a massively fulfilling life. It's not through that one guy sitting at the top of the tree. And so early on I learned this, and I started collecting mentors. And then, I reached a point. I actually had an epiphany. I had a friend who was a high school football coach, and he got a liver cancer unexpectedly and died really fast. And
Wow.
I went to his funeral, and what happened there was all his eulogies were with mentees, football players. And then now these guys were 30, 35 years old because he'd been doing it a long time. But they were lawyers and accountants and stuff. And there were some that were still kids because he was still coaching.
Wow.
And but they did these eulogies about what he taught them and what they learned from him, and it was very impactful. And essentially, their eulogy showed that he was immortal, right? Because they were going to go and give the same advice that coach gave them to their little brothers and their kids, and that sort of thing, and it was going to immortalize him in a sense. And I realized that I had taken all from many mentors, and I hadn't given back to mentees, and that's kind of what happened to me. And I started two things. First of all, I wrote my book. I figured my book was the easiest way for me to just give back.
Yeah.
And I sold it. It went to New York Times bestseller list, and
Right.
became a classic. We sold about 30,000 copies. Now I'm actually giving free copies away, and I'll talk about that at the end.
Okay.
And the second thing I did is I started a mastermind group called GoBundance, and what we do in GoBundance is you got to be a millionaire, you got to be successful, you got to be investment minded. and we mastermind and we talk and we create mentor-mentee relationships.
Yeah.
And so all that ties into my life, and that's why I wrote about it in 6 Steps to Seven Figures as the third chapter, which is mentors and masterminds.
Yeah, and I love how you give back there. And I was going to actually bring that up at the end about how you do have this group and about how it's really giving back. And so, this idea of, and I think it can inspire all of us to, number one, yeah, start looking for more people. And, they say something like who are the top 10 people who you're around, that's kind of who you become. And
Hmm.
so to top grade that, which means, hey, the ones at the bottom that really aren't those mentors in any area that's important in your life, maybe replace them with people. But then this idea about maybe even having an objective now of not only am I going to have mentors, but I'm going to be in a point where I can be a mentee to others. And that's just a very uplifting, godly concept there, thought and desire for us to really be as I think that really makes all of us feel good. Like, yeah, I want to be a mentee to other people, and to be able to serve and uplift people. And so, yeah, and then is there just mastermind also that do you have any other thoughts, or is there one mentee on mentees that made the most impact on you, or anything else that you'd like to share on that point,
Well,
Teresa?
the cool part about it is a byproduct, and but you don't want to go in this way, But what happens is, not only do you feel fulfilled by
Yeah.
having mentees, but if you're going over goals with mentees, they're sharing their goals, you're sharing their goals, your whatever, you're sharing
Right.
goals back and forth.
Yeah.
A byproduct of it, the American way is that you eventually start your own company, and you can appreciate this. You're an entrepreneur.
Right.
So with mentees, many times they start out as employees, and then or they become self-employed and or business owners, and a lot of times they will take you along for the ride. So I've had several opportunities where I've invested in mentees companies and made a lot of money because I was there.
Yeah, kind of a Shark Tank type of thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that's just great. Yeah, so help them along and help yourself. And that's also that, for all of us to realize that as you thrive, and so you want to focus first on yourself thriving, then all the people around you start thriving. And so you just start living this better life. I like thinking of myself when I was walking today. I walk a couple of miles every day. And as I was walking down this hallway, I was just thinking that I'm walking down the corridor of joy, and the doors of abundance are just swinging wide
Yeah,
open
I
for
love it,
me.
dude. I love
And
it.
so it's just, yeah, a fun thing. And then number four, we talked about act and this inspired action. And any other thoughts that you have around acting in step four?
Well, I think it's a big problem. I don't want to sound like I'm 52. I don't want to sound like this old guy that's like bitching about the younger generation. But the fact of the matter is it's a cliche now, but but I feel like it's so true because of social media, and I'm a big fan of social media. Don't get me wrong, but because of social media, it's so much easier to see normal people get rich. Like it's like this guy's from the Philippines and he started posting on social media and now he makes $7 million a year, whatever. um
Yeah.
but the problem that happens is that everybody thinks they can get rich on YouTube or rich on Instagram, and it's like
Yeah.
it's like winning the lottery. Um so they think that they could just make money and get rich and be worthy in a sense,
Yeah.
without any sweat, without getting
Okay.
their hands dirty, right? Without busting their ass. And the fact of the matter is I when I got into real estate, I didn't have that notion, right? I knew that I was going to work hard, and I did work hard. I mean, there were weeks I worked 90 hours a week. You know what I mean? Now I
Yeah.
made money,
Yeah.
right? I reaped what I sowed, but
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is, you got to work. Even with the book, like I wrote the book, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll just post it on social media or what have you, and I got some advice from some authors, best-selling authors, and they were like, "No way, Pat." He's like, they were like, "Don't you got to work." So I actually
Yeah.
went and I spoke at 53 real estate companies in 7 months, all across the
Wow.
country. You
Wow.
know, I worked hard
Yeah.
to get the book out there. Went to real estate conventions. I went, you know what I mean? I mean, I was promoting my book for
Right.
7 months before it actually came out and pre-selling
Yeah.
copies. And
Yeah.
and that's how I was able to pre-sell 10,600.
Wow.
The
That's
New York
great.
Times bestseller requires an average of 9,000 in a
Uh-huh.
week. And so
Wow.
we sold 10,600 and we got number 6.
Oh,
And
that's great.
and that was hard work, right? I mean, that was
Sure.
7 months worth of work. There's no way
Yeah.
I would have been able to do it on. So I have a friend that wrote a book. God bless him. It's a great book. But
Yeah.
he thought he was just going to sell it on social media. He sold like less than 100. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I mean, so much.
Yeah.
I see people all the time now writing books. You know what
Huh.
they do? They say they've sold a 500, but they basically mail them to their friends and family. You know what I mean? So
Right.
they're not
Yeah.
actually selling books. So
And I think you're really on a great point here, Pat, on that. So we all have our own path to our success, and like watching, those people that made it, whatever the guy in, Smiland that, made 7 million a year, or whatever that was their path. And first of all, none of us know if they really did work hard or not, or what they did, what they were thinking, their connection. There's a whole world and a whole story behind that we don't know.
absolutely.
So for all of us to realize we have each one of us our own prosperous and abundant path, and to find that. And a way to find that is to where you feel good. When things, feel good to you, that just go there, get inspired actions, and then, you're off to your success. So I love that. And then this build up step 5, and on not from the ground up, but from the success up. And you already talked a little about that stay in your neighborhood, your farming area that you were successful in, and any other thoughts on that step?
No, I think it's really important for real estate agents to think about this. If you sell a house to a teacher, think of ways that you can maximize that, i.e., let's say you have a listing of a teacher's house. Get her to post it in the teacher's lounge. Get her to give her a 50 extra brochures and have her put it in everybody's box.
Right.
Get in with the other teachers. Same thing applies to neighborhoods. Same thing applies to, if you sell a house to a cop. I remember I sold a house to a cop, and he referred me to another cop, and then I kept getting these cops, and every time I got one, I'd be like, oh yeah, I sold a house to Daryl Williams, I sold a house to Mark Rutherford, I sold a house to Sergeant such and such, right? And I would purposely remember the names of all the cops I sold houses to, because
Right.
that was social proof. You know what I mean? And they
Right.
were like, I'm using Pat because I trust him because he's a cop's realtor.
Wow.
That would have never happened if I didn't consciously put it out there
Yeah.
and build on my success up. I just so happened to get really lucky to have, gone to high school with a girl who married a cop, and I sold, that's how I got the first one. But
Yeah.
as soon as I got that first one, I just built on that success up, and
If,
if I met a cop at a house, right, I would be all over that, right? I would take full advantage of that. Here's all the
yeah.
cops I sold. Man, by the time
Right.
they left that open house or whatever, I was their realtor, because that was building on a success up, not from the ground up.
Folks, you just have heard from one of America's top real estate agents and gurus, and he's a lot of different things. But there's the secret is in the sauce, and that sauce there is about you have to ask. And really, Pat, what you're saying is you have to ask, like with the teachers, that, if you're not putting those flyers in their mailboxes, you're not asking. And so you have to ask, and ask and you shall receive. So that is
Mm.
just, that's like the action step of action steps. If you want to build, I would say that you could easily get an extra $100,000 commissions every year just using that one action step effectively on, just think on what profession they were in or what area they're in, and then just really digging into that, and asking, sharing the good news about how good you are, and know that every one of you out there are just great. It's a matter of you believing that, because Pat and I believe you're great, right? and and then number seven, to invest. And so
Right.
again, we talked, pretty much about that. But any other last comments about
I just think that if
investing?
you start the day or you start your goal setting with the belief about horizontal income, this is something we talk a lot about abundance at the men's mastermind. Is that a lot of people think vertical income. They think, okay, well, I sold 10 houses, now I got to sell 12. Now I got to, and they vertically go up every year, a little bit, $2,000 more every year. Same thing. Most people have vertical income, and they make 50, and the next year they get a 2% raise, and they make 51,
Right.
every year. And they don't get anything horizontal. I mean, they don't get anything sideways until they retire, and then they have maybe two forms of horizontal income. They have a Social Security, and they got a pension or whatever,
Yeah.
retirement fund, maybe
Right.
three. So
Right.
I think we should think early, like let's build. Like I have over 50 lines of horizontal income. So buying a house and renting out is one.
Uh-huh.
Loaning money to someone with a high interest rate is another.
Yeah.
Um, you know, owning a portion of a company that you don't work at is another. There's many ways that you can create horizontal lines that pay you sideways. And I think the
Right.
goal really is to try to create as many of these as you can, so that that monthly nut that we talked about earlier, that 10 grand or whatever it is
Yeah.
paid by these horizontal lines. And that's a real key to investing.
And then that is just spectacular. And then also, what I call that, is that in the category of passive income then?
Absolutely, yeah, same
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
so that would be passive income. And that takes me to, for all of you, if you want to have three streams of revenue in real estate and this passive income, if you'll go to doctankwebinar.com, and in an hour, you'll find out instantly how to make that passive income and that horizontal income that Pat talks about. And that'll give you three, and Pat adds 50. And so just one thing at a time. Pat, you didn't do all that in the last year, right? It took, years after year after year to build that. Is
Right,
that
right.
correct? Yeah, yeah, fantastic. Well, listen, we have just a few more minutes here, and I'd really like to hear about the Rebus University, and if you can help us understand that and what it is, maybe how we could.
Absolutely. So it ties into the whole mentor thing. So what I did is I found real estate agents across the country. First of all, the Real Estate Rockstars, the podcast, we've had over 700 guests, and all the top realtors. So I'm meeting these people just like I'm meeting you, and then I started getting a lot of questions from the listeners, and I said, maybe I should get to know this agent out in Mississippi or Virginia Beach or Ogden, Utah, or wherever that's doing something on a very high level, um, and ask them to help me create a course, so that the people can get more than just an hour podcast. They can get a 5-hour course or a 7-hour course on how to do specific things that this agent is doing.
Uh,
So I went out and traveled the country, and over 3 years, I created 17 courses on
wow.
everything from real estate investing to real estate, the listing appointment, the buyer appointment, all that stuff, and created courses. And so now we've got close to 100 hours worth of video, and
Oh my
we created Rebus University, and we offer packages where you can buy an all-access pass to go in and take all of the courses, or you could take individual courses one by one. So that's what that's all about. And and my book, 6 Steps to 7 Figures, ties into that. So I'm going to
Okay.
give you a couple of things. First of all, if you want to check out Rebus University Direct, just go to rebusuniversity.com,
Okay.
REBUS.
Okay.
And if there's a course on there that you like, right, and you want to try out that course, I'll give you 50% off your free course. Your first course, 50% off. You just use the coupon code PH50. PH, my initials, 50. Now, there's a opportunity. What I'm doing now is I've decided to give out about 300 copies of my book, 6 Steps to 7 Figures. We had these laying around, and I said, let's just give them out for free because we're changing to a different model in the shipping of the books. So I want to get rid of the inventory. So we're giving away 300 copies of 6 Steps to 7 Figures, and we created a website. It's called Free Six, and it's spelled out SIX book.com. Free 6stepsbook.com. Just go there. I'll ship it to you for free. I'll give it to you for free. You pay the shipping and handling, and we're all set.
That's fantastic. And it's free6book.com.
Free 6stepsbook.
Got it. Okay, got
Free
it.
6 steps.
Yep.
Book.
Stepsbook.com. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for the offer. And so for those of you that, we talked about this inspired action, here is a way to get, America's number one, Pat Hiban, America's number one agent, how to get his book, how to do it, how to get one of his trainings for half off. And so talk about Inspired Step. If you're serious about increasing your business, that you go with Pat. You get that book, and it's free, 6stepsbook.com, and contact. And is there anything else to be able to that you'd like to share before we leave here, Pat?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Hey, I'm all around. Find me on social media. Just type in my name.
Okay, well, you're just fantastic. And it's P-A-T, Pat, and then Hiban, Hiban, and he is the man. So with that, Pat, we want to thank you so much for, you're not only the number one in America in real estate, but you're also the number one educator and just a great man on how you're giving back and a mentor and helping so many people. So we thank you so much for being on the show and wish you much success. And for all of you out there, we wish you to have more wealth and more business, and you can do that here at Agent Wealth Network. Pat, thanks again.
Thanks, Dr. Hank. It's been fun, buddy.
Okay, thank you. Take care. All the best, everybody. Bye-bye.